Thanks for downloading this episode of Cork Talk with me, Tim Atkin. A weekly conversation with some of the most famous people in the world of wine.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Noma Cork by Vinventions. Driven by a commitment to innovation, the new plant-based Noma Cork Green Line offers significant improvements in wine closure performance. Thanks to a rigorous oxygen ingress rate, you can decide which cork is best for your wine, whether it's for young and fresh wines or for those with ageing potential.
Pascal Chatonnet has not one, but two wine-related PhDs. After a 17-year stint as an academic at Bordeaux University, he switched careers to become a consultant and take over the running of his family's right bank estates. Our fascinating chat covered his views on Brettanomyces, cork taint, ripeness and picking dates, his favourite grape varieties, Merlot, Tempranillo and Touriga Nacional, and his enduring love of antiques.
Hello, Pascal. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm very, very well, and it's lovely to hear your voice. I think you're in Bordeaux for once, aren't you?
Yes, this week I am in Bordeaux after a couple of weeks of travel in Europe, and we have a busy week with the revision of our 23 in Bordeaux to fill our barrels, and so we have to rack out the 22 to prepare the space. So busy week.
And how's 23 looking as a vintage? 2023 vintage.
But it's looking, as you know, in Bordeaux, we are making vintage of the century every year. So it looks as a new one. But honestly, it's interesting. We have been very surprised by this vintage. It's not a classic one from far away, but since a couple of years, we have no more classic vintage, I think. So the big difference is that we were fronting very bizarre weather conditions from the spring to the last day of the harvest, with we start with some frost in some places. Then we got a very wet spring with a lot of downy mildew as a consequences of this climate, and a lot of damage in some place. Some other not so much. Very different from one variety to another one. Merlot very sensitive, Cabernet much resistant. Then we got finally a summer, quite decent, but nothing special. Then very hot, very, very hot with 2 heat waves in August, quite serious. So it helps to the grapes to ripe. Finally, it was a bit disturbing at the start of the harvest with a couple of rains, but very positive at the end. So we were a bit afraid, but finally very positive because the vine started.
So it could be okay.
Yeah. But very different from one place to another one. So that's not something very homogeneous. That's the characteristic of the vintage. And I am not talking only about Bordeaux.
Yeah. Not just in wine, but
maybe before. But we have trace of the family in Saint-Emilion. Yes, for the 16th centuries. Then the Saint-Emilion city burned, so we lost a lot of trace, rotten trace of the family. But yes, we were quite old, ancient on my father's side, from Saint-Emilion city. So
and were they winemakers back then?
Originally, not really. They have 3 main activities. First of all, they were coopers. They were as well using stone from the city to build houses. As you say, stone. Yeah, exactly. And then they were perceiving the tax, which is not very exciting.
And both your father and your grandfather owned chateaus, didn't they? So yeah.
But because they were involved in the exploitation of these stones in the city of Saint-Emilion, they bought a small estate in a place which is today a bit famous. It's a place named with chateaus on, and this place was not originally for vineyard. It was used to produce stones, but when they finish to produce stones, they develop a vineyard, and which is actually Yes, because we are from a family involved in the vine industry, mostly than the wine, but it's linked obviously. My grandfather was managing a nursery in Bordeaux in Tempranillo. And my mother and my father developed a business in the vine area, to provide to the vine growers all the stuff necessary to produce, to plant vines, to manage vineyard, and to produce grapes. But they were not.
And now go on. They were not what?
Even on my father's side, they were historically involved in the wine industry. My father and my mother were not owning vineyards, and so my father, as for hobby, for Saturday and Sunday time, bought a small vineyard in the 60s, late 60s, and they have developed what is Vignoble Chatonnet today. Mm-hmm.
And today you have what, 4 chateaux in Vignoble Chatonnet, which is your group?
Yeah, they bought in 1967 a small estate with a bit less than 10 hectares in a very bad shape. A very old estate. We have trace of production of wine in this area on the right bank of Bordeaux since the early 60th century. So it's very old, but it was in very bad shape. And step by step, he has replanted all the vineyard. He has built a new winery in the early 90s. And today, this family estate is managed by myself.
So you were always going to go into wine, really, from a young age, yeah?
Yeah, and every Sunday we had lunch with my grandfather, and it was time to drink wine, and the kids were allowed at this moment of the week during the Sunday lunch time with the chicken on the table to drink some fingers of red wine with water, and then step by step the water disappear.
As an academic, I mean, you did 2 PhDs, I think not just one, but 2. So I should call you Doctor. But what were your main areas of research when you were?
Well, in fact, academic? It was an accident. Definitely, it was an accident because I was not ready for this kind of study at the university. I was supposed to do the diploma of enology. It's a 2 years study, and finally I spent 20 years at the university. So it's definitely by accident. I was doing, fortunately, we can say that today, my military service. At this time, the military service was still existing, and it was mandatory. And finally, I got the luck to be able to work in a laboratory in the university area to check all the foods and the wine bought by the army.
Really?
Yeah, so I was not so much involved in military stuff at this time, and during this year, my old professors invite me to spend some time in their lab because they had problems with some students doing their studies, and fortunately, my commandments agree with that. So I was very happy, and I spent some hours in the lab to help my old professors. And step by step, I was successful at this time. And they invite me to stay and to do a thesis. And step by step, I spent close to 20 years in these labs, and I got 2 PhDs. So my main area originally was, everything concerned with around the oak, oak tree, and how to make barrels and how to age wine in barrels. So that was in the late 80s, early 90s, which, at this time the barrel was a new fashion. And so, there was not so much knowledge about how to make good barrels for wine. To make barrel, it's very, very old history, but to make qualitative barrel to age precisely wine was not so well known. So I have been contracted by a cooperage named Seguin Moreau, and they pay for my thesis to the university. So it was 3 first years, and I have been quite successful, as you say, for the first thesis. So they invite me to stay, and I have made the research and the development for this company during a couple of years at the Institute of Enology of Bordeaux, the famous one. Voilà.
And what was the second PhD?
It was a continuation, but because I was at this time in the second PhD, I have been very lucky to work with Denis Dubourdieu. And with Denis, I got the opportunity to open much more my vision about enology. So we were always staying in the area of wine aging, but not only red wine, not only aging in barrel. So I made research in microbiology. Brettanomyces has been one of our very serious research development in this area in the late 90s. We made because in the same time I have developed seriously the capacity of the research lab with new technologies. So we developed a lot of new technologies to study aromas, positive and negative. I have been mostly focused on the negative area.
This was Excel, was it? This was your company Excel that you created, in 1992.
So then I developed Excel in 92, but I was still a student at this time because I made my first PhD in 1991 and the second one in 95. So in between the two ones, I developed Excel labs. But outside the university area. And so, this time, the originality of Excel is what I use technology for research, developed for research for the industry. So it was one of the first 2 labs in the world using, high technology designed in research lab for the routine analysis to make wine, absolutely, and corks.
Because you're famous, really, for discovering it or identifying it in wine. It's known as Brett, which was often described before that as being a good terroir, the taste of a place, of terroir. What is it and how does it develop? Just briefly, tell us about Brett and how you can stop it.
I haven't discovered Brett. Honestly, Brett is well known in the beer industry since a very long time. It has been considered a bit more lately in the wine industry as a yeast able to produce some disorders in the re-fermentation of wine, giving special taste. But at this time, I am talking about the late 60s. It was not clearly identified. Everybody was talking about special taste of flavor, mousy taint, but not really what the bread is able to produce. And Brettanomyces in the red wine is able to produce volatile phenols. We have two kind of, 3, but 2 main ones, 4-ethyl phenols, 4-ethyl guaiacol, which are very, very, very common in most of the red wine, still today, but much more 30 years ago or 40 years ago now. And so I made the link in between Brettanomyces and what we call today the bread character, what I name at this time phenolic taste, phenolic on flavor, because it's come from volatile phenols. And so today there's a common word to design this particular taste is bread character. So it's not really mousy, because mousy, plenty of other microorganisms are able to produce mousy taste. When horse, the leather taste, the stable taste, the urine of horse is absolutely typical and unique for Brettanomyces. So that is my contribution to this discovery.
And you also did a lot of work on cork, didn't you? On TCA, cork taint. Yeah. Do you think is it still a big problem in wine? Do you think? But
at this time, it was a very big problem.
And now?
And now much less. And I can say you that I have to be a bit more humble, but I think we can recognize that we make a very strong contribution to the change in the cork industry. I'm sure that if you ask the same question to the cork makers, they will tell you honestly the same things for two reasons. First of all, we are I didn't made any discovery in the area of what is the cork taint. It's trichloroanisole, TCA, which has been discovered by Swiss researchers in the early 80s. But it was quite difficult to analyze, to quantify in the wine at this time, because there was no easy technology to make this analysis in the wine and in the cork. So my contribution at this time says we have developed precise methodology to analyze the TCA content in the wine, the TCA content in the cork, and to make a relation in between them. So we were able to say when a wine was contaminated, if it was really the cork and what kind of contaminant. That is the first step. No more debate, because only by tasting, honestly, you cannot say. The second point, which has been very important, that more or less similar in the same time, we discover that some wines still in the wineries during their aging process in barrel or in tank were able to have a TCA taste, a corky taste, without any contact with the cork, because they were still in tank or in barrel, So, I made a serious contribution at this time. I am talking, in the 1995 to 2005, to identify a source of contamination, not from the cork, but for the cellar environment, from the winery environment, with pesticide used to treat mostly the wood structure of the roof, or the wood pallets used to store the bottles. And they have been treated years ago, maybe 10, 20 years before, with a pesticide containing chlorophenols. And these chlorophenols, with time, with the humidity of the cellars, with the low ventilation of these buildings, were able to be transformed by fungi into
the wine,
into chloroanisole, and then through the atmosphere. So I am not talking about a direct contact, but through the atmosphere, they have been able to contaminate the wine barrel or in tank. So it was very difficult for the owners of this estate to understand how it was possible to contaminate wine in the barrel through roof, treated roof. They didn't know it was treated, and sometime with a big distance in.
And you found that as well, right?
So I found that. I found the way to analyze, and I found the way to fix the problem. So, and it has been a big development for Excel Lab at this time.
A lot of stuff you were doing was on faults. I want to ask you a little bit more about quality, really, because a lot of your life is because not with faults, but with making great wines, right? What do you think are the three, just briefly, what's important to quality? How do you determine and how do you affect quality? What are the factors that affect quality in wine?
Well, first of all, the first quality, from my opinion, is the absence of taint, of flavor. Yeah. But that is basic. Yeah. That is not make something good or excellent. That is the very basic level. No off flavor, no taint. Okay. Clean wine, we can say. But it's not because it's clean that it's good. What is made a wine good, very good, or great? It's a bit more complicated, because we have to understand to define this characteristic much more deeply in the characteristic of the place, the characteristic of the varieties which are used to make this wine. It's what I name the identity, the essence, the authenticity. What is responsible for the authenticity of this wine? If you don't understand that, okay, sometimes you can success, sometimes no. Right? And if the place you are trying to do a great wine is not able because some parameters are not right, the climate, the soils, the variety, if the equation is not perfect, you can never produce a great wine. You can produce decent wine, good wines, but never great. A great wine, that is a perfect combination between the climate, the soil, the man, and if you are lucky, sometimes you are doing great wine. So it's not mostly technology. It's not mostly secret. That is, or if there is one secret, is to understand how these three kind of elements are linked and how to be able practically day after day to join them to produce year after year, vintage after vintage, a great wine, a good quality wine.
Tell me a little bit about picking dates, because I know that the styles of wine you like tend to be slightly more elegant. In the beginning of your career, you worked a lot with Michel Rolland, who was, again, very famous at the time. And Michel's known for making later picked wines. I mean, possibly that's an unfair caricature of him, but you were always a bit of an earlier picker, weren't you? How important is early picking to quality, do you think?
Alors, I'm not early or late. I can maybe... I don't want to to explain the position of Michel, but I can do it anyway. You have to understand that Michel started to work in the 70s. The first vintage of Michel was 77, I think, something like that. One of the worst in the history. From 77 to 82. There was not really a good vintage. And so, when 82, and that is something important for him, appear, he understands something. That when you can pick grapes ripe, you are doing much better wine when it is not ripe. So then after the years 90s, appear, the American influence developed, some famous critic in the same time, and we had maybe some exaggeration, that meaning that one of the conclusion at this time, when the grape is ripe, wait one more week. And definitely today it's not possible to say that. Maybe before it was not as well a very good idea.
But now we're living with climate change, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And you cannot have the same conclusion in Napa, in Bordeaux, or in Ribera.
Yeah.
Because the impact of the climate is definitely very, very different. So my philosophy is to try to identify the right moment, which is honestly the most complicated part of the job, I think. And honestly, I as a winemaker or as a flying winemaker, I am quite busy at this time to decide what is the best moment. And you never know. Honestly, you never know if it is perfect or not. You know when it is not ripe. More or less, it's easy. But you never know when it is perfectly ripe. You know when it is overripe, but it's too late. So,
tell me something. I mean, tell us a bit more about your consultancy work, because how many clients do you have and in which countries? And I wonder just how do you choose them?
But today in 2023, I have reduced quite a lot, but since I started in 95 as consultant with one client in Portugal, only one. Okay. And then step by step, I developed this activity. Then in 97, I think, Michel Rolland called me. He was looking for a partner. At this time, we had also a project to make a fusion between his lab and ours. We made a lab in Argentina, in Chile, and until 2010, we did work all together, but finally we never joined. So, from 95 to 2017, I have spent most of my time, I think maybe 55% of my time doing consultancy and traveling a lot. Then I decided to reduce, and so actually maybe I work with 28, I think, different winery. I haven't the the real number, honestly, but it's something like that. I don't work anymore in very long distance, like South America, because before I was working quite a lot in South America, in New Zealand, and in North America as well. So today, I use my time mostly in Europe, or not so far away from Europe, to be able to manage the family estate, because I am not more involved in the lab industry today. But I am more involved in the management of the family, because my parents passed away, and so I have to manage for the family the estate. So it's.
And would you be 50-50 between consultancy and own work?
Actually less. Actually, it's 1/3. Actually, 1/3.
1/3 is your own wine.
Yeah, but until last year, it was 50%. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. I just want to tell us a little bit about what makes a good consultant, because I read a very interesting quote by you. You said that the role of the consultant is to learn. And I'd always thought the role of the consultant was to teach, that you're going there to learn, in a sense. So how much of what you do is listening?
That's an interesting question. Yes, you have different categories of consultants, and you have different clients categories as well, you know. You have clients calling for you to manage and eventually to teach a local team. And you have another category of client, which is just looking for opinions. Yeah? Give me your opinions. I will do what I want. And you have last category of client, which is maybe something in between. And my philosophy is I'm more a teacher. That is maybe my past at the university, doing research, but also working with young students and teaching. So my philosophy is I love to develop and to improve teams. Local teams, because, you know, a consultant, some famous consultants are giving signature on label, but when you count the number of days or hours they really spent in the winery, is not so much. So I think, okay, I am happy to say that I collaborate with a couple of wineries, and some of them quite famous, but I can say I am the winemaker. I am a consultant, and I manage a team. I teach a team, and to teach a team and to understand really the essence of the place, the soul of the place, you have to understand where you are. And so it's why, first of all, before to teach, before to say do this or think about that, you have to learn what you are talking about. So
listen, listen first, then teach.
Listen, taste what has been made before, and understand. One more time, what is the essence of the place? What is the place is talking about you? And if there is no history, okay, that is open. You can do what you want. But when this place has a long history before you, this place will have also a very long history after you. I imagine. Yeah. Definitely, if it is a good place. So you have to respect that. You have to understand that. And you have to prepare this place to the next step. Voilà. So my first action in a winery is to do nothing and to look, learn, discuss, exchange, understand. When I have made this first step, I say, okay, that is not good. That is interesting. And do that, you will see.
Do you think there's a Chatonnet style?
Of course, if you want to make wine, you have a part of you in a wine, for sure. You know, remember the definition of terroir. That is a French. I know that in English it's no clear definition of that, clear translation of that. But terroir is a combination of soil, climate, and man, the work of the man. So the variety is linked with the man. The climate is not linked with the man, but is dependent of the man. So he has to adapt its works with a combination of soil, climate, and every vintage it changes. So the man is fundamental to design a wine. So for sure you have style. what is my contribution to the wine is maybe, yes, inspiring a style, but respecting the characteristic of the place. So that is true that some consultants are much more impacting the style. And I don't want to be this one. I prefer to be the consultant whispering to the ear of the owner saying, think about that, try do that and avoid that. That is my style.
And that may be why you're so successful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Listen, tell me, I read somewhere your favorite grape is Merlot and your second favorite is Tempranillo. Is that true? Are those your two favorite grapes?
We were talking about Michel Roland before. I say, Michel Roland say, I was born under a plant of Merlot. So we are no more, but we were neighbor in the vineyard because he sold his estate and I am still managing our estate, but we are, on the right bank of Bordeaux, Pomerol, Saint-Emilion, we are full of Merlot. So I am obviously a big fan of Merlot. And the other variety we are growing in the place. So Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, obviously. Then Tempranillo has been, for me, yes, a big discovery. When I start to work in Spain, in different areas, because Tempranillo, that perfectly, teams that from the north of Spain to the south of Portugal, even we are talking about the Tempranillo using different names. This variety is changing its own profile very surprisingly. So it's I have been very surprised by this variety and its ability to produce very different category of a style of wine, even it's Tempranillo. And the last one in the same area is Touriga Nacional. For me, it's one of the great variety of the world.
I agree with you. Fantastic grape variety.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere else in the world you'd like to make wine that you haven't made wine?
Yes. Fortunately. We have always something to discover, to experiment.
Where would you like to go? Where, if I could say, Pascal, go tomorrow.
Maybe. For one is maybe Armenia for historical reason. I will be very, very interested to develop, to make wine in this area with very old local varieties.
Like Araignée Noire, yeah?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And another one, it's the vineyard which are on the Adriatic Sea, So it's a bit linked with Armenia because that is, I think, the original road to spread the vines in the world, in Europe first. And so I haven't yet the opportunity to do wine in Croatia, for example, but I test a couple and maybe one day.
I mean, you're from Bordeaux, and France makes most of many of the world's greatest wines. But do you think you could say now that you could make great wine anywhere in the world, almost? I mean, you traveled a lot.
Anywhere, not maybe anywhere, but if you respect the limits of the wine, of the vine, vitis vinifera, if you respect the climatic parameters of the good growing condition for the vine, yes, I think if you have the right soil, the right winemaker, you can do for sure good wine everywhere, and sometimes great wines. I think today it's possible. When you try to produce wine in tropical area, I say, okay, good luck. You can make something drinkable, but cannot be great. Never. Exceptionally, can be good. When you try to produce, even it's not historical place, you want to grow vineyard with no water, very, very hot climate. It doesn't work. And more, if you have to bring irrigation and technology to manage this situation, I think it's better to say, okay, no, that is not the right place. Or that is not anymore the right place. It has been maybe before, but today, no. Yeah. So respect the limit of the characteristic of the vines.
Yeah. And which places have the most potential for you, do you think? Any countries or regions where you look at them and you think they could be so much better?
Or so much better everywhere. We can do better things everywhere. No, I think maybe I could answer in a different way, saying what are the places which were good in the past and more difficult today, and definitely more difficult in the future. Yes, I give you an example. I started to work in the mid-90s in Portugal, in the south of Portugal. Or in Australia, at the same time in Australia. And I saw vineyard disappearing in this area because the climate was so hot, so extreme, that if you were not able to bring all the time the right quantity of water, blah, 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 you were not able to produce something decent and honest, because the climate has been very interesting at the moment, and it has changed, and it's no more possible to do that. So that is an example. Other places which are maybe not so well known today and could be interesting in the future. So we can see more and more good products from Asia, from China, from Tibet. I know some place in India it could be interesting as well on the other side of the Himalaya, for the same reason. So for the climatic condition and the soil characteristic as well. On India, it's not possible because it's a Muslim area, so they are not very excited to produce wine. But in China, I'm sure you have seen some big improvement in the quality of wines coming from this particular area, which is not a traditional place to grow vines and to make wine. But so maybe in the future we will have more and more interesting wine from this category of place.
I'm interested in how you get away from wine. Do you like to travel to non-wine regions, or are your holidays always to wine regions?
No, definitely. I'm not like I remember the Gigal family, and I was talking with his wife, and she says we have spent all our life visiting vineyard, wine shop. I am exhausted by that.
So that's not you, right?
No, it's not me. When I am taking holidays, I'm taking holidays. I don't reject vineyards, but I am not looking vineyards all the time. No, I enjoy the seaside. I enjoy the mountains and area without any vice. But I drink anyway. I drink wine all the time.
Yeah. And you like literature, don't you? Like reading, and you like collecting antiques. I just wonder, what are you reading at the moment? What sort of things do you like reading?
I have the ability to read different categories of book in the same time, or not in the same time, but day after day I change. So actually, I live Comte Sponville, which is a French philosopher, which is doing interesting synthesis about philosophy. And I think that with the world configuration today, I'm happy to read this consideration to understand how the men are so crazy like that.
Yeah. And what about antiques? What was the last thing you bought? What things did you buy? Clocks or pieces of furniture or what?
That's true that I have been more than antiques art collector during a couple of years. That is true. At this time, I had a big house with a lot of walls, and so I had to...
And now you've got a smaller house with fewer walls.
to manage my walls. Actually, my house is much smaller. We sold the big one. And so I'm no more a big buyer. Yes, but the last one, which is maybe 2 years ago now, is not very, very recent. I bought a Polyakov, Serge Polyakov frame for two reasons. Because I love this painter, but I remember when I was a kid to see for the first time a big frame of I was not a kid, honestly, I was an adolescent, and for the first time I discovered this painter, and it has impacted me quite strongly. And I remember.
And now you own one. Now you own one.
I had a surprise at this time. Say, okay, no way. And finally, one day I got one.
Fantastic. So wine has not only made you successful all around the world, but it's also given you enough money to buy something of beauty and art to put on the wall, right?
Yeah. And something we hope to transmit to other people, which are heart amateur. So maybe my daughter, my daughter is as well a heart amateur or not, but it's something for today and for tomorrow.
Pass it on. It's a little bit your idea about teaching. It's about listening, but it's also about teaching. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you, Pascal. It's been fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your passion and your wisdom.
Thank you, Tim.
And I'll see you soon.
Hope to see you one day in Bordeaux.
I hope so soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, what an impact Pascal has had on the world of wine. Even I didn't realise the extent of it. Next week on Cork Talk, my guest is Alessio Planeta of the Planeta Winery in Sicily. Join me then. Thanks for listening to Cork Talk. If you want to read more reports, articles and tasting notes by me, go to my website, timatkin.com. You can also follow me on Twitter @timatkin and on Instagram @timatkinmw. See you next week.